welcome back to On Air with B&B.
I'm Brittany.
And I'm Bethany, and we are two mental health therapists with real talk and mental health tips that matter. So today we're going to be talking about building emotional resiliency in children and adolescents. Right. And I kind of thought a good place to start would just to be like to define what that means.
Right.
Some people might know, some people might not. Mm-hmm. My understanding of emotional resilience is the ability to bounce back from stressful events, and keep growing and looking at it as like a learning opportunity instead of giving up and quitting things.
Yes.
So, why is this important for our kids?
Right. So long term, right? What are we trying to obtain as parents or as caregivers or as educators, right? We want our children and adolescents to grow up to be responsible, independent, resilient adults.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Right? And so how can we obtain that for their future as adults? Well, it starts now. It doesn't start then, right? That's kind of like my perception of it. What do you think?
Well, I definitely think I have to 100% agree with you as a mom and a clinician of like 15 years treating kids and adolescents.
Right.
The earlier you start, the better. Letting kids learn from their mistakes, showing them that they're capable of making good choices and learning from their mistakes.
Yes.
Obviously within reason. We're not going to say like, hey, like, why don't you go try to see what happens if you play in traffic?
Right.
But if the consequence isn't huge and it's something that like will not ruin their future, I think it's great to let them see that like when we believe in you, that you're going to be able to make good decisions and bounce back and handle all of these things. But we also are going to be here to support you when you do make a mistake, because it's just a mistake. It's just a minor setback,
right?
And it's just an opportunity again to learn.
Right. And building emotional resilience also teaches our children and adolescents healthy ways to adapt and cope with stress as well, right? Like stressful situations. So why is it important long term? Because it kind of allows us as parents, as caregivers, as professionals, as educators to support our children and adolescents now, to promote them in their future as they're becoming adults, right? To become responsible, resilient, and independent, correct? And so there are a lot of long-term benefits to building emotional resilience in our children and adolescents for their adulthood. So one of the biggest things that I love to kind of like talk to my own client population about is long-term mental health benefits.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Because they are coming to us short term, hopefully.
Right.
And we're giving them tools and things to practice, not just when they're in therapy, but when they're not in therapy, not just momentarily, again, when I say in therapy, I mean in the room, but then I also mean like while they're seeking treatment, but then when they get discharged as well for the rest of their lives.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, it kind of builds a strong foundation for their adulthood, but it also promotes positive self-image, promotes a lot of confidence. It kind of takes away a lot of self-doubt, right? It kind of negates that. And it promotes a lot of healthy interpersonal relationships that are really going to be helpful for them when they are adults, and even is helpful as their children and adolescents now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what I want to kind of touch base on with our listeners today is why is building emotional resiliency in children helpful now, right? And there's several different reasons. One of them being that it helps, manage stress, right? So it gives you the tools to cope with like everyday stress, whether it be academic, whether it be social conflict, whether it be an interpersonal conflict. A lot of our kiddos with anxiety we talked about fawning and, just like people pleasing and perfectionism, and they kind of hold themselves to a certain standard, right? So that would be considered interpersonal. Another reason I think that it's really helpful now to build these skills is to, reduce negative reactions. Okay. So what am I talking about when I'm saying like negative reactions? I'm talking about, we experience a stressful event,
Right.
or situation or, whatever. And then we don't regulate it well because we don't have that emotional resilience.
Mm,
And then we are experiencing a tantrum or an
yeah.
outburst. And then that's leading to other, longer term issues with friendships or, academic performance
Right.
or social relationships with our parents,
Mm,
even, or our siblings.
yeah.
Um, and so we definitely want to work on emotional resiliency now to help us regulate those emotions more effectively
Right.
in the moment,
Right.
but also for long term.
Right.
Because everything I'm talking about right now is helpful now, but then, like you were saying, will
There's
be
long-term
helpful
benefits.
long term as well.
Yeah, because we're trying to teach our children and our adolescent, we're trying to teach this population the healthy strategies now
Mm-hmm.
instead of when they get to their adulthoods and they're adults and they're trying to like deal with life and the stressors of life, right? And trying to navigate all of the things that life can just throw in your
Well,
face.
and that
But
kind of brings me to another reason it's helpful now is for
yeah,
problem solving.
right.
So, I'm trying to think of what video it was in. I want to say it was in video 5, how the brain reacts to stress. And we talked
Mm,
about a lot of the executive functioning aspects of our brain, and one of them being flexible thinking.
mm-hmm.
And so this is, something happens. We want to be able to change it. We want to be able to problem solve in the moment
Right.
instead of just panicking, right? And again, if we're more resilient children are able to do, to say, okay, I'm panicking a little bit, but let me like kind of reel that in and then think of a solution, that could be helpful and
In that moment.
in that moment, and then view this as like a learning opportunity
Yes.
instead of an obstacle, I guess,
Right.
that is going to impede on their goal,
Right.
right? On accomplishing their goal.
Right. Like hold them back or have
Mm-hmm.
setback, right? So I think that's really good. And it also promotes like flexibility.
Right.
Right.
Which you're going to need for successful academics.
Yeah.
And again, if you're a more resilient kiddo because you've been practicing the skills, which they take lots and lots of practice. I even need practice doing, my emotional
Yeah.
resiliency.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to help you academically as well because you're going to be able to focus, you're going to be able to slow down, you're going to be able to, whether it be an assignment, a project, a test,
Mm-hmm.
completing homework,
Mm-hmm.
any of those things.
Yeah.
You're just going to be able, even when it's hard, because
Yes.
sometimes, school comes easy for certain
For
subjects,
some.
like, or even like, I've got a lot of kids that are good at math, but they're not good at reading,
Right.
or they're good at reading, they're not good at math. And
Right.
so then when they're good when they're in their, sweet spot, but then when it gets to a more challenging academic subject for them, then again they're panicking. And you want them to be able to kind of like look back and go, you know what, this is difficult for me, but there's so many other challenging things that were difficult that I've gotten through before.
Right.
So I can do it again.
Right. Or not
Right.
even just academics, but also still in the school setting. Like I know a lot of our children, like a lot of our clients have like, I think they call them like specials classes or
Yeah, like PE,
yeah,
art,
music,
music,
or even learning a different
media,
media, learning a different language,
mm-hmm.
technology, all these like really cool fun
Coding now,
things,
I think they
coding
have.
or culinary, all these different things, right? And some of these different skills that it requires different skills, right? Like these different
Mm-hmm.
subjects, if you will, can be really intimidating for our children,
Yeah.
right? And it's essentially what it is. It's requiring a new skill set that can be really uncomfortable and push them outside that box. But if we have an emotionally resilient child, they're going to be successful in at least initiating, like, you know what? It might be hard, but I know that I can do this.
But
I believe in
yeah, or getting
myself.
up and trying. Because I remember
Yeah.
like when I was younger, um, I'm good at like individual sports that involve balance. Okay,
Yeah.
balance. But when it comes to like hand-eye coordination, those sports, terrible.
I'm terrible at all sports.
And so I would literally start to feel anxious during PE because
Yes.
we, whether it be kickball or, flag football or whatever it was, because I was going to have to perform in front of my peers
Oh,
and I
yeah.
knew it wasn't going to go well.
Right.
And, or at least in my mind, it wasn't going to go well.
Mhm.
And I would even sometimes like say I was sick. Could I go to the nurse?
Yeah. I would say I have asthma.
Oh.
I did. Oh my gosh, I remember this one time at school too. We had like a talent show. My talent was to hide and pretend to disappear. Right?
Oh.
Yeah. Because I just was not emotionally resilient in that
Yeah.
moment. I didn't have these skills, right? And so we defined what it is. We defined why is it helpful long term, right? We talked about why is it important to do it now. Or to learn it now for like our children and adolescents. What strategies, right? Like, let's kind of get to like the meat and potatoes of it, right?
Yeah, because we're telling all of you, like this is why it's important. Please, like, build your kids up and make them emotionally resilient.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are like, okay, that's all good
That's
and
fantastic.
fine.
So how?
But what do I do?
Right.
Right.
Right. So one of my favorite things that I love to tell like my own clients and their parents is, well, as the adult or as the parent in the household, it's really great to model it. And they just look at me. Because here's the thing, how as a parent, like we have to, if we're going to hold our children to these certain expectations, we should hold ourselves as well. It's only fair. Right? And you're a parent, like,
yeah, and this is not an easy task.
Absolutely not.
There are many times when, like I get home, I've had a long day, I've had a stressful day. I think, okay, it's fine. I'm off work now. I'm going to get home. I'm going to, just see my kiddo. She's going to eat dinner. She's going to, do her homework, get ready for bed. We're going to snuggle and all is going to be great.
Sounds beautiful.
And then I walk in the door and then I walk in the door and, I don't know, she had a fight with a friend or she's having trouble with homework or she's tired or she doesn't like what's for dinner or God knows what. And
I had like a long day at dance.
Yeah.
And it's like 9 p.m.
She's arguing and then I'm looking at the time and I'm exhausted. And so I start to, unravel, but then she starts to unravel even more. Yeah. And, I have to really try so hard to remind myself, like, my reaction is going to feed her reaction.
Absolutely.
So, and like, if I want her to be able to like regulate and like get through hard situations, then I have to show her how to do that.
Exactly. And we have to bear in mind too, I'm not saying all, that's not what I'm saying here, but sometimes and most often than not, our children learn from us, quite frankly. And so how we respond is typically what we need to model.
Yeah, right? Like if we don't get a job that we want, we have to be like, man, at least we tried.
Yeah.
Or, like, I don't know.
I'm trying to think of,
because I'm trying to think of like examples I do in front of mine because, she's not always going to get a part like that she tries out for. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, just like things like, so I can validate, but show her like, I really wanted that too. And I really worked hard for it, but I didn't get it. And it is a bummer. Like, I'm not going to like pretend it's not.
Right.
But you know what? Maybe that wasn't the job for me.
Right.
Right. And I'll try again, but it'll be something even better.
Right. It just has nothing, it has no negative reflection of me per se. It's just not for me right now. Right. So my first strategy that I would recommend to all of my viewers, like tuning in today, is modeling this resilient behavior, because our children and our adolescents, they honestly learn from example.
Definitely.
Right? And
they're watching you all the time.
Exactly. We need to show and demonstrate how to handle very challenging situations.
And may I, if you cannot do that speaking as a parent, say, excuse me, and go to your room and take a break for like 10 minutes and then come out and once you've gotten it together and then try to model it. Like,
but that is still modeling positive behaviors.
Right.
I do want to point that out. Like acknowledging like, wait a second, like I'm really upset right now.
And
I
I
kind of
don't
need
want
some
to lose
space.
it.
Right. Like I need some space. I need to like go to my room and decompress. I need a moment of silence before I react in a negative way.
And
Right.
show them it's not timeout, it's a break.
It is. Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Another one is kind of encouraging problem solving, which is kind of like an example you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But how can we promote that as teachers or educators, right? As other professionals tuning in today, or even as parents or even caregivers that might be tuning in tonight? Like, how can we do that, right?
Well, I know what we shouldn't do. We definitely shouldn't fix the problem for them.
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
let's not jump in and try to, because again, as parents, I'm going to speak as a parent a lot.
Yeah.
And I do that in my sessions too. But, you know, we want to just like jump in and like fix the problem or give the kids the answer because it's easier and we want them to be successful.
That's not doing anything.
We're not allowing them to learn.
Right. What's that saying? It's like you can give a guy a fish and he can have a meal for the night, or you can teach the skill of fishing and then he'll have meals for the rest of his life.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So giving them the answer, it's not helping long term. Okay, it's not really teaching anything. We want to guide them to the solution. And what does that look like? It's kind of like by promoting and asking questions. Like, what do you think would happen if, right? Like, what would happen if you do this? Or what would happen if, like, I have one of my brothers, Mason. Hey, if he's too, yeah. So Mason, when he's younger, we're on like the playground and he is swinging from the monkey bars inappropriately, hanging upside down. And I'm just kind of like, Mason, what would happen if you were to fall right now? And he's like, oh my gosh, I would like land on my head and that would be very detrimental because he was at an age where he knew if he hits his head, like that could lead to severe concerns at that moment, right? So we definitely acknowledged it, but I didn't tell him, hey, Mason, get down. Hey, Mason, that's not safe. Hey, Mason, don't do that. Hey, Mason, we're going home.
And I'm definitely guilty of that as a parent,
And
like
that's so
of doing
hard.
that. And then I have to kind of like go back and be like, okay, my gut reaction is to tell her like to stop, not to do that. You're going to get hurt. Why, you know, all of these things. But then I'm not allowing her to like stop and think creatively
Absolutely.
about and how to solve problems on her own.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we want to guide. We want to promote critical thinking in the moment. Okay, so that's the second example. A third, which is my personal favorite, and I talk about this all the time with my parents, we really want to promote and create a safe, comforting, supportive environment as parents.
Right.
Right. And so what does that look like? It's kind of like, it's okay to make mistakes, being open about that, being vulnerable, kind of having a very like transparent conversation. Like, oh my goodness, like even as a parent or as an adult, like, oh my gosh, like I really messed up on this. Like next time I need to be more self-aware. Next time I need to be conscious of this, or I'm going to learn from this opportunity, right? There's such a negative connotation linked to mistakes or failure, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But how on earth do we all learn?
By making mistakes.
By making mistakes, right? And we just want to encourage our children that, hey, I understand that you made a mistake. Like, let's talk about it in that moment, like, you know, and create that safe, warm, welcoming environment as parents, right? But we also just want to let them know it's okay to make mistakes. It's very normal, that they're human. It's actually expected, but we need to learn from it. That's like the biggest takeaway. And that kind of ties into like my fourth strategy that I really like, which is teaching emotional awareness, right? Teaching emotional awareness is relatively complex because we all have a lot of different emotions and we feel our emotions very differently because we're all different human beings, and it presents itself to look very differently, especially like, I mean, you and Piper, I'm sure, have a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences, I'm sure.
Very many.
Especially when it comes to big feelings and emotions and how you both demonstrate it, right? And so we want to teach our children how to identify these things. And if you're a parent tuning in and you don't know how to specifically do that, especially after watching this video and all of our videos, we always recommend, you know, getting individualized counseling or your own professional.
Or like there's a lot of books, even on YouTube. Like you can literally Google, you know, emotions for kids books, and a lot of different books will come up.
Yes.
and they narrate them and they make
Yeah.
that fun for kids. And it's a really good way to, get the message across
Yes.
in a way that they relate to and understand.
Yes.
Somebody reading about feelings
Yes.
and how to express them, and that it's okay to feel them and all of those things.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. I have had to use many of those books with my own child because, like you said, we are very different. Like she is more sensitive than I am when she feels her feelings.
Yeah.
And I'm, unless it's something like really big, I'm like, whatever, like moving on,
Right.
And so sometimes it's hard for me to parent her because I don't actually understand where she's coming from, but I don't want her to feel bad for the way that she is experiencing her feelings.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned books. There's 2 books that I wanted to bring up, and I know you already know where I'm going with this. So one of the books is actually one of Bethany. She recommended this like over a year ago. It's Parenting for Love and Logic.
My favorite.
Which is so fantastic. We even like read it and then we kind of like converse about it, and it's really, really helpful. So we would put that in the link below.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about that more, but not today. Maybe we'll do another video just on that book, just like, kind of like a review of it. Because I've been using that parenting book even before I was a parent as a clinician working with kids, just because I really like the idea of it. And the idea of it is raising responsible human beings, accountable, kiddos that also have a lot of self-esteem. And I just really like it. And I've been using it with my own child for such a long time. I make suggestions all the time with clients. And you can take what you want from it. And it's a real easy read too. And it gives real life examples, which are very relatable. So we'll talk about that in depth another time.
A different video probably. Yeah, so stay tuned. Right?
Yeah.
A second book that I love, which I already know you know what I'm about to say.
I don't actually
The Lighthouse.
know. Oh, The Lighthouse, because it's similar. Yes.
They're super similar. The Lighthouse, from what I'm understanding, it's a lot more recent. And the cool thing about The Lighthouse, they actually have like a parenting course that's kind of like linked to it. So I can kind of put that in the caption below as well if anyone tuning in tonight is interested. Okay. And this all kind of ties into like our next strategy, which is kind of like setting realistic expectations.
Right. So because we all have expectations in our homes, for our kids, for our family, for ourselves, and, we're talking about building emotional resilience. And if we have expectations and they're not, they're just too massive or too complex for our kids, and they can't accomplish or live up to them, then they're going to get very discouraged, and they probably will give up.
Yeah.
So I think we want to set like realistic expectations, right? Like, and that's going to look different for every family, for every kid in the family, because again, they're all different
with different needs,
but we really want them to see that expectations are a good thing. They're achievable. And, but there are going to be setbacks. And when we have those setbacks, we just, pick ourselves up and keep pushing through.
That's when the emotional resilience comes in.
Right. A good example of this, expectations, like setting realistic expectations. We have a whole positive reinforcement video that we did for kids and how to implement that. But I was in that video. Remember, I was talking. No, I don't even know at this point.
Yeah.
Like, to be completely honest, I'm forgetting. We need a chart. But we were talking about, a lot of the behavior plans that I do with Piper, because she works really well. If she can see her expectations, she sees what she's going to earn or not, or not earn. She has one right now. It's Monday through Sunday, and it's about anger. We're trying to get her to see or not anger. It's about arguing. We're trying to get her to be more aware of the fact that she we say something and then she has to have the last word.
I remember this. I think we did talk about it in that video.
Yeah. Right. Well, or something like it. She's always on something. Stay tuned. Okay. They work for her. Yeah. But what I like about it is it has Monday through Sunday. It says what the expectation is. on the left-hand side. At the bottom, there's an asterisk. It says exactly what that means, just in case anybody following it, including her, gets confused. And then it has a yes and no, like she either earned the point that day or not. She either met the expectation or not. If she didn't, we circle the no. But you know what? It's a setback. And then tomorrow you have another opportunity to earn it. Right. So it's not like, I didn't get it and now I'm just going to give up and throw in the towel. Right. I didn't get it today, right, but maybe I'll get it tomorrow. Right. You know, so I think that's really good to implement too, again, with your kiddo, like what's realistic for them. And my kiddo, you know, she does really great sometimes, and then sometimes she makes mistakes, but like I know her well, and if I don't make it a day-to-day thing and I made it a weekly thing, that would not be realistic for her, and she would get halfway through the week, and if it wasn't going according to plan, she would give up. So I do it day to day.
And I think it's also important we keep saying realistic expectations or expectations, like that word consistently, especially in this video. And I like to point out that having that conversation, at least with your child, on what the expectation is, will allow them to be successful. Otherwise, they don't know what the goal is.
Yeah, like a lot of times I'll ask a kid, like, well, what do you have to do to earn that?
And they're
they'll tell me, well, I have to be good.
And what does that mean?
I'm like, well, you're going to have to give me some details, because that could mean anything in your home. Like that could be different than what being good is in my home. Right. Yeah. So I think, again, good point, Brittany. It's really good to sit down before you start it and go over the expectations and give them examples of what you don't want to see, what you do want to see, have them give you examples just so you can make sure that they're really understanding the expectations and that they are realistic. You might need to change it. Maybe you thought 5 tallies, you know, was too many, but then you have the conversation and you're like, ooh, we need to like lower that or higher, you know, make it like increase it.
Absolutely. So, and you also said something too that kind of like sparked a memory that I actually say to my own clients and their parents. Setbacks are normal. And with the setbacks, we also want to like bring in and like hone in on like, we're not striving for perfection.
No, it's like when I like try to work out, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm going to work out 4 days this week. And if I like one night, I'm just like, I do not feel like it. I just want to watch Netflix and eat Cheetos in bed. Yeah. And I do that instead of feeling like I'm a complete failure. I'm like, whatever. I worked out like 2 days this week and I still have 3 more days this week. So I
still have the opportunity.
Exactly. Like, and even if I only get 3 in instead of 4, that's okay too. 3 is better than 0.
It is. It really
That's what I tell myself.
It really is. And I liked how when you were giving that example of like the chart with your daughter and how she has to like earn these things, and it kind of ties into like encouraging like a growth mindset.
Yeah, the growth mindset. And growth mindset is basically the whole of being emotionally resilient, because growth mindset, they have books on it, they have workbooks, they have videos, but growth mindset is, again, just like taking every opportunity, looking at every opportunity, whether it's good or bad, as an opportunity to learn something, like moving forward. And I really love that, because a lot of our kids, you know, there's a lot of pressure on kids these days, academically, socially, sports. Like these kids, I don't remember having this many extracurriculars, or the extracurricular isn't to the extent that it was, you know, and like it is supposed to be fun. And I think most of them are having fun. Yeah. Sometimes, most of the time, whatever, but it's still a lot of pressure. And when they're not, like attaining certain goals, I guess, in the time that they thought they would, you know, and it's easy to go, I can't do this. Okay. So growth mindset is, again, not, I can't do this. It's like, okay, I can't do this yet. And they called that the power of yet, which is just another topic in that growth mindset, is the power of yet. So it's not, I can't do this. It's, I can't do this yet. And I just need to keep working at this and I'll get it. I might not be the best at it. I might, you know, not really enjoy it. But if I keep working hard, I will eventually be able to learn how to do whatever it is I'm trying to learn how to do.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
I love that, because the yet kind of insinuates that there's still hope and that you could still obtain that particular goal or that skill. It's just going to take some work, which is doable.
Yeah, and it's reinforcing, which leads me into our next intervention for helping our kids build these skills of emotional resiliency, which is positive reinforcement. We did talk about this recently in our reinforcement video. And, you know, praise is one of the best ways to reinforce our kids. Obviously, the behavior charts, things like that. But more importantly than praising accomplishments and goals, and we mentioned this before, but I just really want to mention it again, is praising and reinforcing the efforts of our kids. So if we see that they started their homework and they sat there, I don't know, for 45 minutes and really focused and tried, but maybe they didn't finish like 1/3 of it, hey, good job trying to get your homework done tonight. You know what I mean? You had a long day. Then you came home and worked on it for 45 minutes. I get it that you're done, you know, and you're kind of just maxed out. Maybe you can get up tomorrow morning and try to finish it, or maybe you can ask for more time. But regardless, good job just even trying and sitting there for 45 minutes, you know, because that was probably really difficult. Or, you know, this morning we went to tumbling. She had a tumbling private and the coach showed up 30 minutes late. So she only has one a week. We haven't been there in weeks. It's normally an hour. She was doing like round off back handspring after round off back handspring, aerial this, aerial that, which takes a lot of energy. The coach got there. He apologized. He thought we were meeting later. I don't really care, you know what I mean? Because like we weren't so much on like a time like today, but then he wanted to do an hour more of tumbling, like, and give her the lesson. And she was really tired and she was starting to like peter out that like last like half an hour. Cause at that point it had been almost an hour and a half. And he just kept encouraging her and telling her what a good job she was doing and how proud he was because he knew she was tired. And at one point she actually like laid down on the mat and was like, I can't go anymore, you know? And he was just like, that's okay. Good job today. You worked really hard. So again, praising the effort, you know, she didn't actually like get the skill. She didn't make it to the end of the lesson, but she tried really, really hard, you know, and got those efforts praised. So that shows her like, even though I was tired, I did really good and I can do that again when I'm tired again, you know?
I love it. Yeah, positive reinforcement is really helpful, especially in conjunction while you're trying to build emotional resilience in your kids.
Yes, absolutely. And then another one that I wanted to touch on is just healthy risk taking. So it sounds odd, like, you know, risk taking.
It has like a negative connotation, right?
Should we be like encouraging our kids to
take a risk?
Take a risk. My opinion is yes, because not all risks are bad. Like risks just mean, you know, it might not turn out the way that you want it to, right? Like I might go say hello to a kid at school that I want to be friends with, and they might not say hello back.
Yeah, and that could be scary.
I might invite somebody to have a, you know, a sleepover, and they might not want to.
Rejection.
I might do something new to my hair and then it does not come out like it did in the magazine. Or I should say online nowadays, right? Like totally dating myself. 17 magazine. If anyone remembers that little beaut. And then, you know, or I'm trying to learn how to do a back handspring and, you know, like maybe I land on my head or I twist my ankle or I look silly in front of, you know, the kids who can do it, you know? So these are all, in my opinion, like healthy risks, you know, but like if we didn't try, then like without risk, taking risks, there's no reward. Like then maybe we're selling ourselves short from something that could be really cool and fun. And maybe my hair looks great. Maybe that person wants to be my friend. Maybe I do get that really hard skill, right? You know, so.
But it also promotes, like when we're promoting safe and small risk, essentially is what we're encouraging right now. It literally encourages and promotes confidence, especially when it kind of works out in the end. And if it doesn't work out in the end, it's kind of like, well, at least I tried.
Yeah,
and that kind of ties into
absolutely.
the growth mindset strategy that we were
It
talking about
does.
earlier.
It's an
Yeah.
opportunity to learn, you know. And again, we're not gonna, hey, why don't you go jump off that bridge and
No,
see like how
yeah,
that
that's
turns
not
out?
what
Like
we're
that's not the
saying.
risks we're
We want
talking
it to be
about.
safe, small risk. And when we say risk, when I say risk, I'm implying something that's uncomfortable for the child that can promote growth. Okay,
Definitely.
or it can promote a learning opportunity, which kind of does tie into growth.
Yeah,
it's pretty
absolutely.
Synonymous. So, what's another one? I like when, as a clinician, when I encourage like my clients or even the parents when we're talking about this, promoting social connections. I think that's really, really important. We want to make sure and ensure as the adult that our child or our children have a strong social foundation that is positive, that's loving, nurturing, encouraging, that they know who their support system is, right? They're able to identify them so that whenever they do experience these setbacks, not only do they have, the belief in themselves, but we're talking about kids here, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really nice and encouraging for our kiddos to have that supportive system that they already acknowledge who they are, right? That is also rooting for them. That's kind of like what I mean by that.
Yeah.
And that can be parents, that can be friends, family friends, right? Extended family. That could be teachers,
a coach,
educators, yes, tutors,
a babysitter, anyone.
Literally anyone, okay?
The child trusts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trust is very, very big in that. What's another one? We want to I always like coping strategies, right? Like teaching and promoting healthy coping strategies, which we've talked about, like I think in video 2, when we were talking about managing, like how to manage anxiety.
We might over talk about them, but we can't help it.
But we can't help it, right? So coping strategies, it's kind of like effective breathing techniques, mindfulness techniques, which is synonymous with like meditation, whether it's self-meditation or guided meditation, okay? Physical activity, especially for some of our kiddos. And I really want to encourage our viewers right now to look at our second video, because we really spent a whole video going over all of these different types of coping strategies.
Because I think that video was managing anxiety, but I mean, you could use these coping strategies for depression, for, ADHD, for all kinds of things that are negative emotions. It doesn't just have to be for anxiety.
Correct. Absolutely. What's like another one? Encouraging reflection after challenges. Why is that so important? It kind of ties into it's okay to make mistakes, right? Like when I was talking about earlier, and like one of the first couple strategies that I had mentioned, that it's okay to make mistakes, to have that open conversation. We want to encourage when we're talking about, what just happened, we want to reflect on, okay, how can we prevent this from happening again, right? Where did we kind of go wrong? We want to use this as a learning opportunity. We don't want to view this in a negative light, right?
Well, and I think also when you say like reflect, because as parents, I think we do a lot of the talking sometimes. Again, we want to ask them, what could we have done differently? And even if they say, I don't know, or shrug their shoulders, sometimes just sitting there in silence and like not giving them, again, the answer right away, you'd be surprised all of a sudden the wheels will start turning, and then they will come up with some ideas. And then you can kind of like, add your...
I like it. What could I have done differently? How could I be more supportive, right? What are some things that you need from me? What could I do to be more helpful in certain situations, right? So I like that a lot, because it's really, it's allowing the child to build insight for future situations.
Yeah, and I think this is especially important, the reflection piece. It's always been important, but our kids are so overexposed, in my opinion, to media these days. And I think everyone mostly will probably agree. Whether it be news or social media, or just like hearing things from friends that are exposed to media. And I say that because not all kids have phones or devices or internet on their devices. But they have friends that have devices and then tell them about all these things. Right. You know what I mean? So sometimes just like all of that can be very overwhelming. So just like limiting how often you have the news on, like in your home, like around your kids, especially if they're younger, or if you have like an anxious kiddo, or maybe asking them, like, what do you think? Are you, some of them are probably not even listening, but then some of them really are, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
just saying, like, do you like it when I have the news on? Like, or does that make you, like, are you listening? Are you not listening? Like, when you are listening, like hearing the things that are going on, how does that make you feel? And then definitely, how I feel about social media.
Right.
The
Yeah.
only reason we even have it is because of this channel.
Literally.
Because I try to model for my child that, like, it's not necessary to live a fulfilling life. And actually, like, I like
Yes.
staying off of it, because then I'm more focused on the things I need to be focused on, and not everybody else and what everybody else is doing
Yes.
and wearing and listening to and eating. And
Right. You can kind of like, if an individual who's on social media or just like any of those types of platforms, if you allow yourself, you could just kind of like spiral, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. It got dark, guys.
It did get dark.
So we were supposed to video
This
yesterday, and it just didn't
Did not
happen.
happen.
And then here we are doing it now. And so you've literally changed
Yeah.
from afternoon to evening with
Yes.
us.
So yay. One of my last strategies.
Sorry.
We're such a mess. We're human too, okay, guys. The last strategy that I will kind of give you guys, because I appreciate you guys tuning in. And I just kind of, trying to think of like another strategy that I can give. Oh, like fostering a sense of purpose, which is literally emotional resilience. What do I mean by that?
This is so important. I was
really
just
is.
talking about this the other day with a kid.
Yeah.
And my husband.
Purpose-driven activities, right? Like, why is purpose-driven activities so important? Because it's giving your child purpose, right? Which ties into self-worth,
Confidence,
self-love,
yeah.
confidence. It's like boosting.
You're only
all
doing
these
it for
things.
yourself. You're not
Yes.
doing it for someone
Someone
else.
else.
Yeah.
It's like building that resilience. And I think that is super important. So just finding out the strengths and the likes and the desires of your child or your children, and really honing in on that. Like, oh my goodness, like my son really loves soccer, right? And he's actually pretty good at it. Or even if he's not good, like, he just loves it. And so putting him into a soccer team and maybe getting like a private on the side, and it's just something that you could see him thrive in. It's just like ecstatic. Or like your daughter in dance and getting her privates, right? Or maybe your child is more into like academics and they join like the math team, and then they're competing and you're seeing their confidence
Yeah, I have a
boost.
lot of kids like with debate team or like STEM or
music bands and competing.
Yes,
like,
music.
That's a big one. Competing. I have some clients who do that and they thrive. And then they're building their own like little network of friends that have very similar interests. And then that's kind of like ties into what I said earlier about fostering like a strong social connection, right? They're kind of like finding their people, and that helps.
Which sometimes takes longer for some kiddos than others.
Yes.
So we hear you frustrated parents who are like, my kid just like can't pick something, or they pick something and then they switch, and then sometimes it takes time. But I had a kid recently. I think he's changed his topic of desire about 500 times since I've been seeing him over the past 2 years. But he has always loved bugs. Like, okay. So there's an actual scientific word for it, and I can't think of it right now. But apparently there was this animal con, and he went, and it was a bunch of YouTubers who have like turtles and animals and whatnot. Fun. Yeah, it was like Comic-Con, but like animal YouTubers. And his favorite ant YouTuber was there. And he met these other kids who also loved this guy. And he was like, I found my people.
There you go.
And it's taken him forever, but they're out there.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You're going to get to that finish line.
But he keeps trying, I guess, is my point. Like that, even though it doesn't always last and it doesn't always pan out, like he doesn't give up, and he's constantly trying new things. Yeah. I mean, he was like finding mushrooms like for like 3 months last year. It was like he had a mushroom hunting book. And
it kind of ties into your strategy when you were talking about earlier positive reinforcement. Like, as adults, regardless if you're the parent, the caretaker, the educator, the tutorer, the coach, kind of acknowledging and praising the efforts. Like, we want to reframe our thought process as the adult. Like, instead of saying, oh my gosh, they can't pick anything, instead just saying like, oh my goodness, like, I love that you keep trying new things until you find something that you really like.
Yeah,
right.
totally.
And so I think we can just end with that, right? So I really appreciate everyone tuning in today. Thank you for joining us on Air with B&B, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.